Welcome. My name is Tom Davidson. I'm the CEO of Everfi. We're based in Washington, D.C., and I'm excited to spend a couple minutes with you telling you about what we're up to. So Everfi started in late 2008 with a really specific goal of attacking these very, very large, intractable social issues that plague the country that we thought no one really spent a lot of time focusing on. These are areas like financial literacy, student loan management, campus sexual violence and sexual assault, bullying, healthy relationships, opioid abuse, and prevention areas around that. And to build that into the school day, into the college life, and now with a bunch of our adult programs, and do that at a very significant scale. So we operate as a software as a service platform. Our customers, who are thousands of corporations and foundations and universities and others, license our software on a multi-year basis, and we really have tried to hold ourselves to the best-in-class SaaS metrics. So we'll do about $104 million of top-line revenue this year. We've had revenue growth of over 100% and net revenue retention of over 100%, and trained about 16 million people. We've got 4,000 plus customers, 450 employees. And one of the things that we're really trying to do here is build a very, very important socially relevant education company that's making very, very big impacts in communities across the country. We also really care a ton about building just a best-in-class, badass software business that makes no apologies for being a business that wants to be very large, be independent, and be one of the best software companies in the country. To do that, we've really wanted to surround ourselves with the very best investors that we could possibly have. We've got our team, John David Massengill from Advance here, who helped lead our last round, and before this, and John David and the TPG folks and Bono and some interesting folks invested $190 million last week into the business, which is really going to give us some juice we think for the coming years. So we're real excited about it. Just to walk you through a little bit about what we do, these are the areas that we spend a lot of time thinking about. We think that for the most part, they're areas that have been left outside of the core curriculum of schools. So they range, as I mentioned, from African American history, really specific civic education, all the way over to digital literacy and bullying prevention and alcohol responsibility and prescription drug abuse and other areas. These are areas that governors and families and local legislators and teachers, most importantly, are trying to get their arms around. There tend to be really scattered answers to these questions. There's usually zero funding for them at any scale, particularly in the areas where we operate. So if you think about the Mississippi Delta or the Alabama Black Belt or the Flathead Reservation in Montana or the Kootenai Reservation in Montana, these are areas that never have dollars for this. I was a former state legislator for a long time and realized that there was actually never going to be any dollars for this, ever. So you had to create and construct a funding mechanism that allowed the private sector to get in the game and get their hands dirty and do something which has never been done in education before, which is contractually obligate the biggest, most important institutions in the world to fund life skills and critical skills for kids in schools, to not ask for it, not ask for a donation, to contractually obligate them to provide a better life and better opportunities for kids in the country. We're doing that thousands of times over with the biggest organizations in the world, and we think it's a really big idea. We actually think it's a $1 trillion idea, and so we're really excited and think our partners are really excited about that as well. What we do is, where the rubber hits the road is, we build out these very sophisticated learning platforms. Zach Wagner, who's our head of K-12 product development, spends all of his days thinking about how to bring to life areas and adaptive ways of teaching students about really complicated issues, often highly regulated issues. And so these are things like how you teach compassion and empathy, how you teach students about very, very difficult concepts to get a hold of, whether it be how credit scores work, how payday lenders work, how mortgages work, all the way over to putting them in situations where they have to go through BMI index calculations around drinking. They have to put themselves in situations of bystander intervention around campus rape and sexual violence. They're very tough issues. They ain't dinner table conversations. They're very hard for teachers to engage in the classroom. And it's a really sophisticated way of bringing them to life that Zach and his team have to go through. But they wind up being really fun, engaging, sophisticated ways of bringing this to life and putting kids in this situation where they're really, the learning is at their hands, and it's tons of fun. Our customer base is, we think, just a really exciting thing. It's the largest financial services firms in the country who use our financial literacy software to both train their customers, students in places where they live, colleges that are part of their communities, all the way over to training senior citizens around and their families around elder abuse and the plague of that. All the way down to second graders, of teaching them the basics of community learning, of financial literacy in other areas. It's just a wonderful group of folks. We've got hundreds and hundreds of financial institutions that private label this software, giving us millions of users and the ability to pull from that data and understand the best ways to teach people at really specific events in their life, of the basics of savings and compounding interest and how marketplaces work, all the way up to really specific things around their first credit card or their first mortgage, or first-time home buyers, military families that are transitioning out, and others. So we're really proud of this network and think that this is just a very, very large market that we're going to go after. Is just an enormous TAM to this market in and of itself. In the higher education side, we have 1,700 universities today that license our software for schools and for their students. So this is, if you go to Harvard or Stanford, or you go to LSU or Alabama or Ole Miss or wherever, students are required, hey, what's up, Jake? Students are required to go through this program before they arrive on campus. Their faculty and staff is required by law. Again, driven by law, driven by statute, required, not elective, and kind of a scattershot approach to it in the past with no benefits of data, comparative analytics, and that's really what we hope to bring to life. What our goal is that every single university, community college, college campus, online university uses Everfi's platforms to have literally every person who darkens the door of their campus go through this around training around campus sexual violence prevention and high-risk drinking, hazing, and other areas. One of the things that we get excited about is we power very large portions of the major sports leagues in the country. So if you look at the Warriors doing African American history platform in San Francisco schools, if you look at the Blackhawks doing something around STEM in Chicago, if you look at the Caps, who are going to be Stanley Cup champions in a few weeks, running really specific STEM and math programs in local schools, that is Everfi behind the scenes operating that in partnership with them. It's our software, it's our team that's implementing it, and we just launched a really, really exciting thing around summer learning loss and the degradation of learning skills with Commissioner Manfred and with Major League Baseball and all of the teams, and it's just a really exciting thing. If you saw in the Super Bowl this last year, you probably saw these character education and healthy relationships commercials around our program, which is called Character Playbook, that is powered by all of the NFL teams that my partner Tammy Wincup put together. This is just a huge contribution to healthy relationships in high schools across the country. We're really grateful for the chance to operate that and do that at a really big scale. And then we tend to do that work and work around STEM and digital citizenship and these other areas for lots of the very large, whether it be Walmart or Target or obviously the sports teams and Comcast and others. So really what we aspire to do is really convene the thousands of the largest, most important institutions on the planet. They may be foundations, it might be Harvard and Stanford, it may be Intel and Airbnb and Facebook or others. It may be all of the major financial services, but we really aspire to be the internal and external learning engine that powers the entire universe of every company in the country. And lots of these folks are, paying us many millions of dollars to do this, and we think that that'll play out across, hundreds and eventually thousands of these folks if we get our act together and do it the right way. On the corporate compliance side, as you all know from watching people try to build, one of the things at Everfi is I think that we're really proud, and my partner Meg Keene, who runs talent and all of our human resources for us, drives this, is our, it's been very important to us to build a culture at Everfi that empowers people, that's welcoming, that's as diverse as we can possibly be. We're certainly not nailing it on all fronts, but we really take a lot of pride that Everfi is continually be recognized as absolute best in class on that front, kind of in every rating you could imagine, and we really aspire to be that. So one of the things we want to do is help other companies do that too. So we've acquired 2 businesses in the last 6 months that are very heavy on the corporate compliance side. This is diversity, inclusion, sexual harassment, AB 1825 compliance in California, Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. And so you can kind of begin to look at these major companies and see, hopefully see Everfi begin to manage the internal training around these complicated issues, external communication that it's important into communities and schools and colleges that live in the ecosystem that our partners are in, and also for their customers. And we think if we do that, it'll be one of the most important companies in the world. It's also going to be a really, really freaking big company if we figure that out. So that's certainly what we are trying to do. One of the things that's a differentiator that we've talked about for years here since we had a couple $100,000 in revenue when we first started giving this talk here, and this talk hasn't gotten any better during that time, by the way. But my partner Tom Parisi, who's been with us for 7 years now running all of our school network, is we really thought that one of the bets that the education space was making that was a very wrong bet was that you could crop dust the education space. Everfi employees, Tom, how many full-time teachers do we have at Everfi? 120. Yeah, so we have 120 former full-time teachers who work at Everfi. They work in product. Zach Wagner, our head of sales, Ellen Patterson, who's our chief revenue officer, was a teacher for many years in the Louisiana Delta. And Tom was a teacher. And I'm not sure Pickram ever went to school, but he's just one of these double E guys from Stanford, and that you got to not like because of that. But what's been important to us is that we don't think you can be an education company and employ 2 teachers. We think you can be an education company by having 30% of your workforce be former full-time teachers. That gives you an incredible advantage to know a couple of different things. One is you absolutely cannot crop dust this space. Anybody who's walking around these buildings and doesn't have an on-the-ground implementation team is wrong, just dead wrong. You can get a lot of commercials, and you can get a lot of EdSurge articles, and you can do a lot of things, but that ain't farming. It's crop dusting. And most of the people in this building disagree with us on that, but technology is not the full answer. You actually need teachers on your staff to be talking to teachers on their staff in the schools and at colleges, and administrators who speak a very specific language that I don't have. And it's been a bet that we've made, which is a very expensive bet, but it's the best thing that we've ever done. And so when we've got all kinds of baked-in warning systems and stuff that allow us to understand very specifically what's going on at Park West High School in Meridian, Mississippi, and the ability to have our folks on the ground servicing and training and implementing and helping our teachers do this lift, which is EdTech. And hopefully that team is going to be 500 people strong at the end of the day. that's implementing these programs at a very specific scale. One of the things that we're also trying to do is just bring some excitement to to these issues that are often not super fun issues to talk about and deal with. So whether it be teaming with Pharrell Williams or John Calipari or lots of celebrities and actors and stuff, to be able to highlight and give kids a pat on the back for going through this stuff that's part of the school day that's often not celebrated has been something really important for us to have. So that's the Everfi story. I left a little time here to answer any questions that you have, and happy to do that. So thank you for so much for listening. I appreciate it. Anybody have anything? Sure, we're gonna let the mics get over here real quick so they can record it here. Okay.
Is all of the content yours, and do you do any sort of customization of content for specific clients?
Yeah, great question. So all of it, except for like literally a smidge where we've partnered with some people on some of our smaller programs, 99.9% of the content is ours. We felt it really really important that we own it all. One of the, right or wrong, never in doubt, one of the bets that we've made is that we want to own every part of the food chain, from the product build to the content to implementation team, data, reporting, customer relationship, everything. So yes, we own all of it. I would imagine for the foreseeable future, we'll continue to make bets on our own product development team. It's about 100 people strong that are doing that and growing. And in terms of the customization, we don't. What we've tried to do is customize the like what I would call the edges of it, but we think it's really important that the learning software be the same for everyone that uses our platform. So we think that there's real advantages from a data and comparative campus, from comparative customer analytics and things that the reason why people are subscribing to our software and not building it themselves is our really pushing them to say, hey, there's a benefit, Bank of America, to using the same thing that US Bank uses or using the same thing Regions Bank uses, because you're going to learn a lot from the comparative analytics of those courses. So we try and keep the learning software the same. And on the front end, if the CEO of Bank of America, which happened in one of our military transition courses, wants to have a really cool video and have the presence be theirs, we think that that's great and can be enabled at the edges away from us.
Hey there. So it sounds like a lot of the education is kind of modular, foundational learning experiences through software, but the subject matter is on critical skills, which often manifest through decision-making in particular moments in time. Yeah. So when you're looking at financial education or alcohol education, is there a vision, or is there currently part of the student experience that is that follows the student via mobile, that nudges the student to take different actions or make different decisions kind of just in time, and not just kind of preliminary foundational knowledge?
Yeah, great. It's such a good question. We have absolutely morphed, particularly in our financial services and our what we call the Campus Prevention Network, which is the sexual assault prevention software. To going from being this like one moment in time, you come onto campus, which we think is really important. Like you come onto campus, it's a pretty big transitional event. You should be learning about these areas on alcohol responsibility and others, to building in kind of booster shots. And in many cases, the regulatory environment has made you build those in over time. So yes, and you're going to see us move over time more into like literally moments in time, pre-spring break, touch points over the years, so you have these booster shots along the way. Financial services is super interesting. We think that you've got to have the kind of short and long game. We think that students need to start learning about finance in second grade. And that is the basics of our program. Vault is, needs versus wants, compounding interest, long-term savings, like all the stuff that just can't happen soon enough. Also building in kind of intra-family conversations around that, so you get kind of a multi-generational discussion. Have that go through the life cycle of that. Now, what we started to team with the banks around is more like around the college transition than others is absolutely just-in-time learning that actually gets pushed to the consumer. And we really cheer this on of using financial education as kind of almost like a lead gen vehicle. We don't use it as lead gen, but the idea is that if someone is interested in buying their first time, originating their first mortgage, getting their first credit card, whatever, we just really believe there should be a learning component around that. Frankly, the regulators believe this too. And so we have started to build that into the software where that truly becomes modularized. People can break it out, wrap it around products, and have the learning point be at those really specific moments of time. So specific that it could be a military family that's transitioning back. It could be someone who's tripped 7 overdraft trips on their account, and that something gets sent to them, and that it can be a reparative, moment for them, and they get back into the system. So, and we think that there's a benefit, and this is self-serving, but a benefit to us doing that versus Wells Fargo doing that, or Bank of America doing that, or somebody that third party, approved by the regulators, built with regulators, that there's an advantage to that. So totally real. I can repeat the question if you want me to. Yeah. Yeah.
How many learners do you estimate that you can reach? The second is, how do you validate knowledge attainment, or how do your institutions validate?
Yeah. So the question was, how many learners have we? It's about 16 million. How many learners we've reached? From a knowledge attainment varies course to course. One of the reasons why in most of the areas, if you look at what I would call kind of healthy relationships going from college to high school, and now we made an announcement last night with Jeff Weiner from LinkedIn to build a course around this in grade schools, that you have the kind of life cycle where schools can begin to track that. And colleges have a very easy way. I mean, it's not easy. They've got a way of tracking literal incidents around this, blood alcohol, visits to the hospital, number of incidents of sexual violence on campus. Those are very sad and very real data points that they can choose from, and use placebo campuses to determine whether our software is actually helping that or not. We've done that. In the financial literacy side, we really leave it up to the bank partners we don't want to be in the business of kind of customer engagement around performance and stuff. So we kind of say, listen, we'll put you in the learning game. We'll do that from a best-in-class perspective in the center, and then kind of let you do that along the way. But building more and more of that out all the time. Go ahead, and I can repeat it. Yeah.
If you're comfortable disclosing, can you talk about what your plan is with the large investment?
Sure. So the question is the large investment. It's like 40 foosball tables, each row. A couple of things. It's funny. My reaction is that the investment got a lot of attention, and to me, it was just a tiny amount of money. Like, it's funny. I look at these issues. If you think about financial literacy, and Rohit from TPG probably doesn't think that it's a tiny amount of money. But I look at this and I say, listen, we're taking massive swings at, in some cases, trillion-dollar exposure issues around everything from a financial literacy to student loan defaults to what happens to a campus and a family, more importantly, when an incident of sexual violence happens. And so to me, it was kind of a small amount of money for the bigger picture. I mean, we want to build this to be $1 billion revenue business, and we think that'll be a drop in the ocean of impact, frankly. But what we want to do is a couple of things. We definitely want to be more acquisitive. We definitely want to build out more very specific content areas. And we want to just pour a lot of kerosene on our core business. So that will be those will be the three things. One more? Are we done? Okay, sorry. One more, and then we'll close it.
Thank you. As you've grown from financial literacy to all these, what you just mentioned, the different types of subjects, what drives your decision to add something new? Does it have to be both regulatory and
Yeah, great question. Yeah, great question. Quick answer to that is this. I mean, really specific question. That not a lot of people are doing it. So it's kind of one of these things that's off the grid. You don't have, 6,000 coding, or like there's 6,000 other, people doing it. Yeah, hey, Jake. Hey, Jake, how you doing? The second thing is that there be some kind of regulatory pressure to it is great, not required. Third thing is that teachers and parents are having a hard time kind of harvesting the parts of the answer to it. What's the last thing? But that you can roll it out across, a very large customer set to do it. Helpful, for sure. Helpful. Yep. That's great. Thank you all so much. Appreciate it.